Hi, I'm Sophie, and I'm currently a product manager at Amazon. And today I'm going to be talking to you about my journey transitioning to product from marketing. So before we get started, I just want to start off with a bit of a disclaimer. The views that I express throughout the talk today are my own, and they don't in any way reflect my employer. So just a bit about me. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I went to school just north of Toronto to a school called York University. A number of years later, I ended up in Seattle, Washington to work for Amazon, which is still where I'm at today. And currently, I'm a product manager on a platform called Amazon Invite. And what Amazon Invite is it is a platform that allows product marketers internal to Amazon to launch products and services to a smaller group of consumers who can give feedback on these products and services before we release them more broadly. And some of the products and services that have recently launched in Amazon Invite are Amazon Halo, which is Amazon's Alexa-enabled fitness band that you may have heard about in the news, and Luna, which is a pretty exciting cloud gaming service that recently launched as well. And so how did I get to this point where I'm a product manager at Amazon, leading Amazon Invite? I started my journey at a company called Rakuten Kobo in Toronto, Canada. I was an early member of the product marketing team. And Rakuten Kobo is a company that manufactures and sells e-readers and ebooks, and also has a collection of e-reading apps. And so while I was a member of this product marketing team, I was fortunate enough to bring to market one of the company's first e-readers, the award-winning Kobo Touch, as well as a suite of e-reading apps. From there, I ended up joining Amazon in Seattle. So I made the move from Toronto, Canada, over to Seattle, Washington in the US. And I was fortunate enough to lead digital marketing for Prime Student in Canada. Prime Student is Amazon's prime offering for college and university students. And I worked on the program the second year that it was around in Canada. And then from there, I really enjoyed working on digital marketing and specifically within the services space. And so I took an opportunity to lead digital marketing for a subscription services program that Amazon at the time was running with Comcast. And it was there during my time working on the subscription services program with Comcast that I had the opportunity to work with a product manager directly and realized that product management was actually something I wanted to move into. And there were a few reasons why. And so there were several reasons that I wanted to make this transition from marketing to product based on what I have observed by working with a product manager. First, I noticed that the product manager actually created the products, and I found that fascinating. As a marketer, I was tasked with telling stories around products and services, but I wasn't actually creating them. And so this opportunity to actually create product looked fascinating. The second thing that I had observed is, while as a marketer, I was really considering the consumer when making decisions. The product manager I worked with had to consider a variety of stakeholders, not just the consumer who was our end user, but the product manager had to consider, for example, myself, the marketer, our business development manager, our partners over at Comcast, a whole team of software engineers, and a user experience designer. And so that I thought of making more complex decisions also really appealed to me. And then finally, the other thing that I found really interesting was that the product manager actually had to understand the systems and the technologies that she was working on in order to make great product decisions. Whereas from a marketing standpoint, that wasn't really relevant to my role. And so for those reasons, I decided I wanted to make the move over to product management. And, when I was thinking about making that move, I couldn't obviously just go into product management without doing anything. And so there were several steps that I took in order to move from marketing to product management. The first thing I did was a bit of a self-assessment where I wanted to understand what were the skills that I actually needed in order to succeed as a product manager. And of those skills, which did I have and which would I need to develop? And the way that I identified these skills that I thought I would need as a product manager was by taking advantage of the fact that I was actually working with a product manager at the time. And so I reflected upon my interactions with the product manager, what I saw her doing on a day-to-day basis, and I also interviewed her. The other thing I did was I took a long, hard look at a number of product management job postings within Amazon. And of course, I had targeted Amazon job postings because I was at Amazon and wanted to continue working at Amazon. But, you should obviously do that for whatever company it is that you want to work for. And so once I had an idea of what some of the skills were that I would have to develop in order to move to product management, I thought about how I would actually acquire those skills. And I'll talk a little bit later in this presentation about what those skills actually were. But the important thing to note here was that the way that I went about trying to acquire these skills was through coursework. And, there are certainly many ways you can go and acquire skills. Coursework is just one of many, but that's what I did in my journey. And I specifically enrolled in a user-centered design program at the University of Washington because one of those skills that I felt lacking was design. And then finally, another thing I did before I moved in order to move over to product management was networking. And so I was fortunate enough to be at Amazon, which is a really large company with a lot of folks in different roles, certainly a lot in product management roles. And so I reached out to a number of hiring managers who were looking for product managers to understand what exactly they were looking for within the product managers they were hiring for in their teams, how I might fit that role. And I also tapped into my own network at Amazon, folks I actually knew and had worked with, to see whether they could introduce me to anybody who was actually working within product management and looking to hire product managers. And one thing I want to note here is I specifically targeted hiring managers who were looking for product managers within the e-commerce space. And the reason I did this is I had deep domain expertise. I had worked for a number of years in e-commerce. I wanted to change my job function. It's never a wise idea to change both your domain and your job function. So I would encourage you as well as when you're trying to make this journey, think about what domain you work in, what domain you're most knowledgeable about, and look to network with folks who are looking for product managers within that domain. And so, when I had gone through that period of trying to move over to product management, I networked quite a bit. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to interview for several roles that I identified through my networking. And when I interviewed for these roles, it was actually quite interesting because not only was I going through, the motions of answering a lot of questions about my past experience, but I actually had to do some assignments. And I bring this up just because these are things that you might encounter as well. And so some examples of assignments that I had to complete while I was interviewing for these several roles within product management at Amazon were, first, I had to pitch a feature. That was what one product manager wanted me to do, was something deeply about the product his team was building and what feature I might want to build if I were hired to the team. Another hiring manager I encountered wanted me to actually write a requirements document. And this was interesting because this was the kind of documentation I would have to write in the role. And so this would give this hiring manager confidence that I could hit the ground running and actually handle the sort of documentation that was needed in order to succeed. And then finally, I encountered one hiring manager who actually presented me with a problem that the team was dealing with and wanted to understand if I were to be hired tomorrow within that role, how might I actually solve that problem as a product manager in the space? And so these are just examples of different assignments I was given. They're not, assignments that necessarily everybody will be given, but I just bring these up to show this is something that you may encounter and have to do should you kind of go forth and interview for product management roles coming from a different discipline, in my case, marketing. And so I interviewed for these several roles, as I mentioned. I certainly didn't get every role, but I was fortunate enough to be extended an offer from the Amazon Devices group. And Amazon Devices is the group within Amazon that is responsible for building, marketing, and ultimately selling a lineup of direct-to-consumer electronics, things that people love and use frequently today, such as the Amazon Echo lineup of smart speakers, as well as the Fire TV lineup of streaming media players. And so I was hired by the group as a product manager focused on growth. And so within that capacity, I was focused on driving growth within the product portfolio by testing and ultimately launching a number of features across Amazon's retail website within both the US and, of course, multiple other marketplaces. And once I had, been in the role for several years and been able to develop and ultimately launch a number of features, that brought me credibility as a product manager. And from there, I was able to transition to the role I'm at today, leading Amazon Invite, where I actually lead a full product as opposed to a number of features. And I think, now that you have a bit of a sense about my journey and what that looks like transitioning from marketing to product management, I want to go back to what I talked about earlier, which was taking a bit of a self-assessment and trying to understand what were those skills that were necessary to move into product management, which did I already possess and which did I need to develop? And thinking about the skills that I already possess, which I call my strengths, I want to focus here for a moment because I think these are skills that a number of marketers possess, and we need to remind ourselves we have these skills. They're really strong. They're really valuable in product management, and we need to highlight them as we try to make a move. And so one of these skills is storytelling. And what I mean by storytelling is being able to actually tell a really compelling story about your product or service. From a marketing standpoint, it's something that we're constantly doing. We're taking other people's products or services, and we're trying to tell a compelling story to consumer about why that consumer may want to try and ultimately use and purchase this product or service. Now, within product management, you won't be doing quite exactly that, but what you will be doing from a storytelling standpoint is using storytelling to inspire a team of software engineers and user experience designers who you work with on a day-to-day basis to want to go and work with you to carry out your product vision. You'll also be telling stories upward through leadership to inspire and make your leadership excited to kind of invest in the product vision that you look to carry out. And so storytelling is really critical in product management as much as it is in marketing. Another strength that I developed through my time in marketing is experimentation. And so this is particularly salient when we work in digital marketing because we're often running multiple A/B tests on our creatives, on our landing pages, just to make sure that we are optimizing our campaigns. And while in product management, you probably aren't going to be running A/B tests on creatives, it's very likely, especially if you move into consumer product management on the software side, that you'll be running A/B tests on your features. And you're not just going to launch a feature without testing it and knowing how your consumers are going to respond. And that's where A/B testing comes in. And so, if you've already done a lot of A/B testing on the marketing side, that's a really valuable skill set to be bringing over to product management. And then finally, analytics is the final skill or strength that I would say that many of us coming from marketing, especially digital marketing, have and can bring to product management. On the marketing side, we're often looking at analytics to just understand why we are meeting our goals. And in my case, I was focused on meeting a customer acquisition goal. And so I was looking pretty heavily into the analytics to understand where there were barriers to meeting that goal, that I might want to tap into and think more deeply about. And it's quite similar to what I ended up doing when I moved over to product management is, when I would launch a feature, and even when I'd A/B test a feature, I'd be looking deeply into the analytics to understand where consumers or users might be facing some friction with a feature that I might want to dive into with further research and understand how to fix. Now, while you bring a lot of strengths to product management as somebody coming from marketing, and I believe I did, there are also a number of growth areas that I think are worth calling out. And so some growth areas that I think become important to focus on are first design. And so when I think about design is really to me about identifying user or consumer, if that is your user's problems. And then in addition to identifying those problems, partnering really closely with your user experience design counterparts and folks in software engineering to think about how to solve those problems. And as a marketer, because I wasn't actually building product, I wasn't really focused on design. And so that was a skill set or growth area that I really needed to develop. And in my case, I ended up developing that through attending the Users Under Design program that I mentioned earlier. But there are certainly a number of other ways, especially through reading, that you can develop your design chops. Another skill set that I think is really important in product management and that I needed to develop coming from marketing was leadership. And what leadership is and where it's really important is really being able to motivate and inspire a group of folks who you don't necessarily directly manage, but you do really need to rely on them to implement and carry out your product vision. And in my case, and in many product managers' cases, we need to obviously inspire and motivate a team of user experience designers, software engineers, even other stakeholders such as product marketers to really come with us on this journey of launching and implementing a particular vision for our product. And so that's where leadership becomes really, really important. And then finally, technology. And, in marketing, it may not be that critical that you understand the systems you're working with from a technology standpoint, but in product management, as I learned from my time working with a product manager, in that role where I led marketing for Comcast services on Amazon, understanding your systems will help you ultimately make better product decisions. You need to be thinking through, what are the implications of implementing a feature one way versus another way? What does that mean for the long run? And you can't really do that unless you have an understanding of technology and specifically the systems and the products that you're working on. So that was another growth area that I had identified for myself and that I believe folks moving from marketing to product management should consider. And so when I had identified these growth areas, I obviously took some steps to try and make sure that I could address them. I did hint at one of those steps I took earlier, which is coursework, but there are a number of steps I took and that you can continue to take. And so how I suggest kind of addressing these growth areas is first reading. Potentially, this may be because I have come from initially started my career working for a company that sells joyful reading experiences. Reading has been core to my own professional practice. But reading is a way that, you can easily learn about and develop skills in growth areas. Another approach you can take, which is one that I took, is you can take courses. In my case, I thought that design was something that was really important for me to develop as I moved from marketing over to product management. And so I enrolled in a user-centered design program at the University of Washington. Of course, there are numerous great courses you can take and seminars that you can attend, such as this one. And of course, you can look at Product School, which offers a great product management curriculum. So I'd certainly encourage you to look at courses as well that can help you address some growth areas. And then finally, there's networking. And networking, as I had mentioned earlier in my talk, is something that I did considerably when I was trying to move from marketing to product management. It can become easier internally at your company if you're at a large company like Amazon, where there are lots of folks in product management to talk to. But even if you're at a smaller company and maybe don't have as many folks to network with internally, there are so many groups that you can join. For example, one group that I personally am part of and really fond of is Women in Product, which is a product management group for women. But there are, of course, numerous networking groups that you can join, and I would encourage you to read up on them and join them. And so I want to end by taking you quickly through some of the books that I have found most helpful in my professional practice, which helped me certainly in learning as I tried to move from marketing to product management. And so first, I would say are some books within the design space, and I've highlighted a few of them in here. The Empathy Exams, which is a book ultimately about empathy, not a traditional product management book, but an excellent read for moving into the field. Good Services, which is a book about service design. Anyone working in e-commerce, I think, should read something like this because ultimately we work in building services. And then finally, Competing Against Luck, which is a business classic that'll take you through the Jobs to be Done framework, which is a really helpful framework in learning to understand consumer needs. The other area that I like reading about, and again, I mentioned as kind of one of the growth areas for folks moving from marketing over to product management, is leadership. And I highlight here a couple of my favorite books. First, Radical Candor, which is a book about being, I would say, being an authentic leader, which I think is really important. And then Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, which looks a lot at courage and vulnerability within a management space. And then finally, a couple of books on technology that I've really enjoyed. Tubes, which is a book all about the internet. I believe that if we are going to work on the internet, it would behoove us to understand exactly what the internet is and how it works. And then finally, Algorithms to Live By, which is a book that explains algorithms in really human terms. Algorithms are computer science approaches to problem solving that we encounter in many products in the web. And so if you are going to work in consumer products within the web, it's a great book to read. And that wraps up my talk. And so I want to thank you for joining me today to learn about my journey transitioning to product management from marketing. I'd always love to hear from you. So please send me any comments or any questions to my LinkedIn. I've included the link in the slide and look forward to hearing how you've gone about your journey or will go about your journey from marketing to product management. Thank you.